Airsoft is a simulation of military training.
Okay, good shot, right on the money.
Hi, I am STATEN and I am an airsofter from Northern Ireland.
I'm MANIA Airsoft and I'm from the south of Ireland.
And this isn't sports that we're into, this is just the sport.
Huh? He was. Tower is ours, tower is ours, tower is ours. Yeah. Watch your back, guys. Right in the hand. Woo, nice shot.
Airsoft for me is simply an activity where I can go outside, have some laughs, spend time with people I like, shoot people I like, get shot by people I don't like and like.
Close quarters battle CQB is kind of more for the likes of military training purposes. It's actually probably more of a safety drill. For Airsoft, if it's lashing rain outside, we got somewhere where we go, we're nice and dry, we can do everything we do outside, we're just doing it indoors. I started probably about, 10, 12 years ago, maybe more. I was in college. One of the lads had put up pictures and he was out with the nephews, and it was like pictures of M4s and even the lads at M4s, and I was like, what the heck is going on? This is, he said, oh yeah, go Airsoft now, and I didn't even know anything what Airsoft was. It's like paintball, and he's like, no, Airsoft, and I was like, and it was just completely brand new. Went down, had a game, and I was just running around with a t-shirt, and after the end of the day, I had lumps on me because I just had a t-shirt and that was it, and like looked like I'd been stung by a wasp just in various spots across my body, and I saw, this is deadly, love this.
This fella's a brave fucker.
I've seen him the last game, yeah.
In fairness, my first day out, that's all I had. Like, I was just with a t-shirt and that was in Fingal, and they all thought I was fucking nuts, like.
I started my airsofting like many people, going to a stag do, and it was an indoor site in Belfast, and I wore a pair of jeans, a pair of trainers, and got given a gun that fired when it wanted to and didn't fire when I didn't want to, and oh yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. Equipment that you have to have. You obviously have to have a replica firearm of some sort, and eye protection.
Oh, yeah.
That is the bare minimum. At the end of the day, you don't need to carry mags with you, you don't need to carry a secondary. Footwear is highly advisable, especially for outdoor. High ankle boots definitely stop you going over your ankles.
Yeah, the ground can be so uneven.
Yeah, but in terms of what you physically need, perhaps as a law, for insurance reasons, is eye pro and yeah, your gun to be able to participate. What's advised after that, as I say, is boots, but also possibly some type of protection, like face protection or teeth protection. We've seen people getting their teeth shot out, and it's not fun. There are other forms of protection, elbow pads, knee pads. Even the chest plates have foam inside there that give lots and lots of protection from being hit. Being an airsoft sniper, I typically use something relatively similar to this, which is spring operated. The spring has a piston that creates a vacuum full of air, and it then releases that spring via a trigger, and all that air then gets compressed outside a nozzle, hits the BB and down this rifle or a barrel. That is one shot, and then you have to physically rack the bolt or reload. I also have a sidearm, which typically tends to be a green gas pistol of some sort.
I started off initially with an AEG, an auto-electric gun, which would kind of do exactly what Mr. STATEN was saying, but with an actually spring and a piston head and gears, and would actually kind of draw everything back, fill the chamber with air, and then kind of fire it again, but just does it so much kind of quicker. But found that it can be just kind of fairly inconsistent for what I wanted. I just wanted perfection. And I ended up kind of going to HPA, which is high pressure air, where instead of having gears and a lot more moving parts, it's just a solenoid. And the solenoid essentially they'd have a tank of air and the air line running in, and the air is just literally waiting behind essentially a gate. And once I pull the trigger, gate kind of drops down, shuts back again, and just releases the volume of air. It's the simplest probably way of explaining it. So that the BB kind of goes down the barrel, and it's not affected by cold at all whatsoever. Whereas some of the green gas kind of thing pistols, because of the air being so cold, it can actually jam up the mechanism because they just freeze and lock solid until it kind of, it thaws out for a second or two, and then they go again. I just kind of wanted to have the consistency. I hated things kind of not working. So a little bit more expensive than your standard AEG, but just for headache and to stop Mania from really kind of showing its true colours, I just went HPA.
I'm back. What's the crack?
Bottom left corner of the wooden structure.
I think I might have got him.
I think it's Carl as well. I can tell by the sound of his fucking.
It's who?
Carl, you can sound by the sound of his HPA. Oh, here. Not you.
So it's not me.
Somebody with HPA.
Some people, they don't want their stuff getting wet because they've obviously put a lot of time and effort into it, which I get that, I understand. They don't want to get mucky and dirty, and then others are absolutely loving it, nearly swimming around in it. So, but that's just me. But like during the hotter weather, I've no problem going out in a full ghillie, and I will absolutely sweat the lug out of myself. But I'm happy. I'm not in pain. You know.
Bolt action snipers don't really get affected by the cold. AEGs don't really get affected. Wind does affect the game majorly. So playing in a storm, when you're trying to line up that single shot from a bolt action, it's very, very difficult. The gusts are almost the worst because it's not a consistent wind. Still playing that, but these strong gusts just every so often is an absolute nightmare. You pull the trigger once to hit one person and it blows away. You readjust for that wind and the wind stops. So it can make it very, very frustrating. So wind for me would be the only weather where I would go, I'm not going to enjoy this today. In Airsoft, there are thousands of weapons to choose from, ranging from almost pirate 1647 cannons right through to almost movie props from RoboCop, Aliens, a Halo one.
There is, yeah.
Possibly Star Wars, can't remember. I think the blaster's been made. And obviously all modern day equipment. And it ties in quite nicely with any Call of Duty game or any PlayStation or PC or Xbox game that's been released. You see a big influx in sales in the weapons that are used in those modern day games. There are guys that do World War I or World War II or even Vietnam reenactments. So there's weapons from those eras. Anything and beyond. There's lots of 3D printing companies out there and individuals that get a 3D printer and they print themselves up their own outer shell. So they even take the internals and just put a weird outer shell on it. Is there a difference between airsoft guns and real steel guns?
For me, in the army, my first kind of weapon that I was ever kind of given was the FN, the Fabrik National, an Austrian rifle, 7.62. That can actually be kind of got in an airsoft format, and if you lay two of them down on the ground side by side, you'd be kind of like, you'd actually have to pick them up to have a look. The materials would be they wouldn't be as dense or as strong a metal as what you get in real steel, because you've obviously got an explosion happening in the breech in order for the bullets to be able to go down the barrel, whereas in airsoft, we don't really have that, so therefore you wouldn't have a need for the steel to be as strong as it is. Now, this is CNC aluminium. It is very, very strong, but there's absolutely no way you could put a live round in there. It would disintegrate in the table in front of you if you were somehow able to make it fire.
Well, tonight we're taking a closer look at why police opened fire, killing a man holding an airsoft gun. 28-year-old Eric Provost died Monday night when Orlando police shot him when responding to a 911 call. They say they asked him to drop the gun he was holding, but he hesitated. Later, they learned the gun was not real. News 6 reporter Troy Campbell spoke to a gun expert today about how cops could mistake airsoft guns for the real thing. He joins us live right now. Troy?
Yeah, the Orlando police chief, he says in the heat of the moment, his officers did not have time to determine whether the weapon the suspect was holding was real. Well, we spoke with experts who say airsoft guns of today are more realistic looking than ever.
It has a removable magazine. They action like a real gun. They lock. They have safeties on them.
This is an airsoft gun. That gun now mixed with a couple real pistols. Can you tell the difference? Charles Powers has trained thousands of concealed weapon permit holders, including members of law enforcement. He says even he can't tell the difference between a real firearm and an airsoft gun from 5 feet away. Either one of these at my side, this being real, this being fake, very similar.
Right. And if you showed up at night at my house with one of these guns and beat on the door and you weren't law enforcement, you're taking a risk of probably being shot.
Orlando police say when their officers approached 28-year-old Eric Provost outside his home at the Courtney Landing condos on Monday night, they believed his weapon was real. Turns out it was an airsoft gun. Provost later died at the hospital. In the past, orange tips have been used to symbolize a fake gun. But Powers says criminals will paint the tips of real guns orange just to throw off police.
Now a cop sees that orange tip on the end of a real gun and he's contemplating his career. Do I shoot that individual, do or not? And while he's contemplating that kid's pumping 9mm rounds into his chest.
And we also asked Orlando police what type of airsoft gun that Provost was holding when he was shot and killed, but we were told that information will not be released at this time. Also, as protocol, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is investigating this deadly shooting. Outside Orlando Police Headquarters, Troy Campbell, News 6.
Yeah, you can see how that'd be a tough call to make in a split second. Troy, thank you.
There are some companies out there that actually have their airsoft guns made by the real steel guns. Even though it's called real steel, it's actually a high-dense polymer, like Scorpion Evo. They take the bodies from that real steel gun, but as Mania has mentioned, real steel works off explosions, tiny bullet explosions that propel a bit of lead. We're using like a fraction of the weight, so we only use air. So our parts don't tend to be as strong, although a lot of airsoft players that like the realism will go out and buy real steel parts, and you will be able to fit it to a lot of airsoft guns. Typically, each country has their own legal restrictions. For us in Northern Ireland, being a bastard country, we have kind of two different, I won't even say laws because they aren't laws. There's basically the law that will tell you what rate or power you're allowed out of your rifle. So the rate being, can it fire one shot without having to reload, with having to reload, or can it fire multiple rounds without having to reload or recock, and there's 2 different power levels for that. We have to stick below 1 joule here in Northern Ireland, but England is a different law and Scotland's a different law, but it's exactly the same, and I think Wales comes under English law. So because we're a part of a United Kingdom as opposed to just one country, there's a variation there. But then Northern Ireland, being Northern Ireland, it has its own law on top of that, which means that we can't have our guns as powerful as the rest of the UK, and we're at 1 joule. For us to buy our replica imitation firearm, we either have to be 18, or if you're younger than 18, you have to have your gun sprayed a very bright colour, and you also have an adult with you consenting to the purchase. Also, to buy the replica, you need to be either part of some sort of military reenactment, or you need to have a UCARA, which is basically an association, a retailers association, for players to say that they've been to a particular airsoft site and they've enjoyed airsoft and they want to keep on airsofting, so they want to buy their own weapon. The airsoft site kind of sponsors them and says, yes, we know John Smith and he's airsofted with us 3 times and he's going to continue airsofting, so we suggest that you allow him to purchase that. And that's how it works in the whole of the UK, but I think it's different in Ireland.
There is an age restriction, it's either 16 or 18, but we don't need to have the UCARA license what the guys out up north in England. It's like once you're 16, 18 years of age, it's not an issue, but you are kind of told heavily, do not take it out in public. You will be arrested for carrying a firearm. Obviously, it would be the same up north or in England as well, because people can't tell that this is real or not. And with kind of stuff that's kind of going on lately, everybody, you couldn't kind of blame anybody if a whole lot of cops kind of turned up with firearms, real firearms, and started pointing them at you, I'd be like, oh, it's only fake. We don't know. I've never been asked for a license, but then again, I've never bought anything outside of Ireland. It's kind of been all kind of shops that I've got stuff in Ireland from, so and seeing as I am the age I am, I was like, I'm not going to be asked for ID. As regards kids buying replica firearms, the majority of the times it's the parents that's kind of with them, so probably not a good thing neither, per se. It's probably best off having the kid be the age himself instead of the mother buying their 13-year-old or younger thing, because they probably mightn't really understand the safety aspect of it, whereas a 16 to 18-year-old.
What do you mean set back much?
In your 10 years of airsoft. Legally, we're not allowed to answer this question. Oh, well, Catherine plays airsoft, so you're kind of all right. I could get a lot of
Mine was an investment to get me to the sponsorship status that I am, that I now get it all for free. So that's my excuse, and that's my answer, Your Honour, and I'm sticking with it. So each time you go airsofting, it's typically around 20 to 30 pounds if you have your own gear. You then have a rental charge on top of that, which could be as much as 40 to 50 pounds. And that would be for a whole day from, say, 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. There could be also ammo restrictions on that, so you have to conserve your ammo, otherwise you may have to purchase some more ammo. If you're looking to purchase a gun, you can get anything from 80 pounds right up to, I don't know, 1,000 pounds possibly. A lot of people starting out, there's a lot of budget options for around 150 pounds, 200 pounds, and a lot of players starting out typically go for AEG, automatic guns. It means that you can hold the trigger down and walk your BBs into people, and it takes slightly less skill and slightly less discipline. They're possibly even a lot more fun than that kind of one shot. So you can get into the sport relatively cheaply. Certainly there's a lot of guys that may have a lot of time on their hands. It could be the older guys, it's like myself, that are now, like, they don't have kids, or their kids have grown up, so they've got a wee bit more pocket money from their wives or partners, and it means that they can go out like Christmas and buy all the gear. It could be 12, 13-year-olds coming out with their dads, and so then they're spending. But one thing about Airsoft is everybody it's an internal joke that it's a money pit, because whenever you buy something, you always want to upgrade it or change it to make yours either unique or perform slightly better. And quite frankly, possibly a lot of it is placebo. Changed my mind. Airsoft upgrades or placebos, changed my mind.
Well, for me, it's like starting off with an AEG, yeah, grand. It sucked me in. I liked it. Had the weapon that I had for a good long time. And then it was like, okay, there's guys out here that have got kind of okay-ish weapons, but they're performing better. I wanted that performance. So then my initial €200 or €300 then nearly became another 200 or 300 on top of that, just to get it to where I wanted it. And then, okay, no, I don't like this anymore. I want something better. I want something more streamlined, something faster, stronger. And it just literally snowballed from there. I had a mate of mine once in a relationship and I'm not going to mention his name. I didn't want to get him into trouble, but he actually dropped over to the house one of the days and he says, I'm just going to leave this with you for the time being, and I'll get it off you in a week or two time. So essentially he got it, dropped it off at a Parson motel, picked it up and then dropped it off at me, so he could then kind of somehow fall into his gun box, and then it would appear in his house, and it was, oh no, I've had that ages. So, but if she ever asks, don't say. A money pit, yeah. I do always kind of slag anytime I'm out. People will often, I'm thinking about getting my son or my nephew into this or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, look, if you get him into Airsoft, he'll never have a drug problem, because Airsoft, it'll get so out of control, he'll never have any money for drugs, Probably not a good thing, but the kind of analogy to say,
but true.
Yeah, very true.
For anyone starting out in Airsoft, don't do it when you're angry. Take your hits and pay attention to safety briefs. If you do that, you're always going to have a good time. There probably was a time where I played and I would get annoyed at certain things out of my control not going right, whether it be players not taking their hits or, I don't know, anything at all. And I used to get annoyed at it. Now it's water off a duck's back. At the end of the day, it's just a game. A lot of my friends that do sports, it's exactly the same thing. Golf is possibly one of the most infuriating sports you can do. And if you get really angry at golf, chances are you don't want to do airsofting, because it can be very frustrating. Whether it be your ammo not going where you want it to be, this prize and joy that you've spent hundreds of pounds on suddenly not working, it can be very frustrating. And that's why I just shrug it all off. It's me out with my friends just to have a good time. That's all it is.
So any tips for newbies? Probably listen to the game brief, because many a time, like being in game and having to stop somebody, no, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? And I was like, because the game brief was, whatever, and they're like, oh, and marshals getting involved. It kind of used to like annoy me as well, and I was like, oh, just damn rentals not listening again, or, but it's now that I'm kind of like recording a channel myself, I'm trying to kind of be just a little bit more mindful of things, and I was like, okay, right, they're only new, they're But then again, you do get it with some experienced players as well, where it's like, oh well, what I took from the game brief was this. But no, 9 times out of 10, if I am kind of out playing and I do see a newbie doing something, or he's after doing something with his weapon while he's in front of me, I'll try give him a hand if I can, or direct him to kind of like, oh here, go over to a marshal, they'll help you out. I'll always try and kind of help, because what, 10, 15 years ago I was that guy, and I remember going out one particular time and I had about 2 or 3 weapons with me, and every single one of them kind of failed on that exact same day. And to say I was furious was an understatement, but there was nothing nobody could do. I just had to kind of suck it up, go off, fix it, and then come back again. As we found out the other day, we were testing something here and it just was working fine, and then boom, that was it. It went, opened up, had a look, and it was the knocker on the hammer on the DAP just went first, and that was it. And it was like, and literally only after fixing one, we had to just go and fix the other one. Mind you, the second one did go a lot quicker because we knew what we were doing in the second one.
No way that happened. Alright. Is this too small of a gap to shoot in? It's down, isn't it? Okay, just go. Oh my goodness. How about him?